Meta and YouTube are paying the price after a jury in California found both companies negligent in the operation of their social media platforms. The verdict comes as a separate trial in New Mexico held Meta liable for failing to protect children. Here to break down what this means for future social media lawsuits is 9 News legal expert Whitney Traylor. Thanks for coming in.
Sure. Good morning.
This is interesting. So this week there were two major verdicts against Meta and other media companies. Let's start with the verdict in LA.
Okay.
Because there's another one in New Mexico, but let's go with
correct.
LA first.
Yeah, and they were both this week. So the LA verdict came down yesterday, and that was where there was one young lady who filed saying that it was causing her mental health issues, anxiety, depression. She was having difficulty in school, and the jury came back with a $6 million verdict, and it was $3 million in compensatory damages. So that's essentially to make her whole, all the harm that she suffered, and then $3 million damages in punitive. And so that is to punish the company. And they said that really this is likened to big tobacco in the 80s or the opioid and the pharmacies, where these companies knew the effect that this was having. They knew that it was addictive. They knew that young people were coming on. They're supposed to be 13. That's the rule under Facebook's own rule. And there were people much younger than that, 9-year-old, 10-year-old. And on cross-examination, it was really interesting because they said, well, you have to check that you're 13. And on cross-examination, they said, you expect a 9-year-old to read the fine print and comply with that? Right. So that was a very significant result, that LA jury verdict.
So the $3 million the jury said, but $3 million in punitive, but the judge can decide exactly how much, right? Goes to them?
No, so that $6 million is an award,
Okay.
yes. And in the New Mexico trial, there's a second aspect to it where a judge is going to decide in May. There's a second part of that case where the judge may decide some equitable, something that the company has to change. Okay. So that's going to be interesting. We'll have to follow that in May.
I know there was a lot of testimony surrounding this over the last couple of weeks. How did Meta defend itself?
Well, Meta defended itself on a number of fronts. They first said it was a First Amendment right. They're protected free speech, essentially. They argued the Communication Decency Act, Section 230, and that's a law. I've talked about it a lot. That was a law that was passed in 1996 that essentially says these internet service providers and social media companies, they just bring people to the table. They're not responsible for the content. And they have been able to get away with this for years and years because this has been decades of litigation. And then Mark Zuckerberg also testified that he doesn't believe the science shows it's addictive. Now, they had a plethora of experts that said, yes, this is addictive, but there is this psychiatric, there's medical experts from the psychiatric industry that say, well, we're not sure that it's proven to be addictive, but there was so much testimony from experts, parents, and even users that said, you know, I was leaving class, I was going into the bathroom to check my likes. They're using these filters, so that's how Meta is essentially defending itself.
It does seem an appeal is likely here.
Yes, for sure. There's definitely going to be an appeal, and really, I would look at YouTube was also hit on the LA verdict. They're owned by Google, and they're going to really argue Section 230. I think they have a stronger appeal than Meta actually does, but you'll expect to see multiple appeals because these are bellwether cases. So that means they were just testing these out. So there's so many other cases that are actually lined up and that will come after this. So they're going to want to appeal this because they're going to be stuck with a lot of litigation.
That's my next question. What do you think the verdicts of these two in LA and New Mexico play into all of these other cases?
Well, so it's not necessarily legally binding precedent because these were trial court decisions. So it's not until you go to the appellate level and the appellate courts make a ruling that it actually becomes binding on other courts. But this is precedent in terms of how they're going to go about these cases because now you're seeing society say, no, this is harming our children. You knew about it. They had a bunch of internal documents that came out saying how they're going after the tweens, how they knew that it was 30% of their users were 10 and 11 years old, even though they're supposed to be 13 per their own rules. So I think that's going to be the fact that they prevailed on these two cases, because if you ask legal experts even 4 years ago, they would have never thought these cases got to trial. They would have been dismissed under the Communication Decency Act and others. So the fact that you have now two verdicts against them, yeah, you're going to see the floodgates are now going to open.
We're essentially out of time, but I have to ask you this. What happens now with social media companies so this doesn't continuously become a problem? Are they doing anything?
Well, that's the thing. They're saying, well, you have to check off that you're 13. We have these other measures in place, but they clearly don't work. So that's why we're going to look at the case in May where the judge is going to actually maybe impose certain restrictions on social media. So you may see some real changes this year in how social media is rolled out and how it's operated.
I'm sure we'll check back on that one in May.
I'll be back.
For now, Whitney, thank you.
All right.